good evening and welcome to another community forum. I'm your host Byron Campbell. Welcome, pleased to have you, whether you're on Facebook, YouTube, or MTV Channel 18. Welcome to another community forum. Our co-host Chris, you on Zoom. Chris, are you there? Can you hear me? Chris, are you there? Can you hear me? Chris, are you there? Can you hear me? Chris, are you there? Can you
I
hear me?
am hearing you, Byron. I'm hearing you
Great,
loud and clear.
great. Well, we want to hear from you. We want to know where you are, what's happening in your environment.
I am in Dominica this evening. I had work business doing up here, and we had a lot of rain and so on in Dominica, a lot of thunder and lightning last night. And we still having rain. We had some rain this evening as well. So Dominica is very green,
Okay.
productive in the agriculture. You can get green bananas, plantain, coconuts, pears. They're fully active. You know, it's not like what's going on in Grenada now with the passage of Beryl and what has happened. So yes, I even was speaking to one of my colleagues, and she said, was suggesting better they put a boat together and send down stuff for us in terms of bananas and plantain and all the rest.
Well, we could do with some of that. And on top of that, Chris, I'm learning today, well, we saw signs of it before, we have a shortage of rice on island, and we know, of course, that Marketing Board has the monopoly to provide license for imports, and also they do significant imports. I don't know the specific
We also
reason.
have a shortage of eggs going on as well.
Shortage of eggs. Of course, we know the case. We know what's happening with provisions, both ground provisions and bananas, plantain. Again, part of the reason has to do with the passing of Hurricane Beryl. But clearly is not a good situation at all, because rice is a major carbohydrate food for our population, energy food. So I
So
hope...
you know, I had to go to the supermarket and buy 2 ripe bananas today. I haven't had a ripe banana in Grenada for weeks or months. So I bought it.
And of course, there's a lot of complaint about the farmers, to the farmers, because they hike their prices. You know, we feel that the question of supply and demand should not be for all sectors, not the farmers. But anyway, I hope this is temporary. I'm sure by the next month or two, we should be back to normal. Certainly, I think before Christmas. But Chris, there's a lot happening internationally. I see the 79th sitting of the UN General Assembly is taking place. I heard the Secretary General opening statements, and it's not comforting at all. In fact, if I could just highlight some points he made, frankly, it's scary. He indicated that the world is in a whirlwind, meaning that it's turning fast. He said war rage with no clue how they will end, and nuclear posturing and new weapons cast a dark shadow. He says we are edging towards the unimaginable. He went on to say, I mean, this is not, he says that the state of our world is unsustainable. But of course, he feels that the challenges we face are solvable. So it's, but I think one of the main points he would have made, he's saying that nations can trample international law. They can violate the UN's charter. But he went on also to say that nothing can justify the collective punishment taking place of the Palestinian people. He said the speed and scale of killing and destruction in Gaza are unlike anything in his years as Secretary General. So not a very good situation internationally at all. And of course, he talked about the other wars, certainly the Ukraine situation, and also in Africa. So not a comfortable global situation at all, Chris.
Yeah, and you have to agree with his analysis to date on what is happening. It also brings into question the relevance of the United Nations in that they cannot have seem to have control, because with these wars that he's talking, there's the climate change issue.
Yeah.
And these are the same nations who are engaging in wars or support of these wars across Israel and Palestine and what's happening with Ukraine and Russia. And these are the same nations that are committing the atrocities with climate change and talking about helping, and their help is slow to come.
Yeah.
So from where he sits, and of course he will have view and a more close personal touch with what is happening, he paints a picture that is not nice. And then on top of all of that, you have countries like Israel who is looking to escalate the war in these regions where they are. And these are nuclear powered nations. So the question in your mind, and when you look out in the future, is are we heading down a road where one of these guys will get fed up, launch a nuclear attack, and what will happen to the world in terms of the fallout and where we are? And we say, Byron, on top of this, is that we tend to be more civilized now in our approach and what is going on in our civilization. And here we are, going back to the 1940s when we had world wars, and even before that, World War I, and we're looking as though we're posturing down into those directions and heading into those rabbit holes. So I can understand where the Secretary General is coming from, and I believe the time has come for him to be not diplomatic in what he says and how he says it. As you know, our current Prime Minister for Barbados is not very diplomatic when she speaks about climate change and the impact for SIDS.
Yeah.
And this is something that we have to take and seriously question if the United Nations, through its Security Council and all the other aspects of the arms of the UN, the relevance.
Yeah.
And whether this is an organization that we need to, change or put sanctions for people on your Security Council that they can't, not vote or veto votes and all of these things. That probably we need to look at restructuring what we do with this body.
Chris, another interesting development is that the UN, they voted, the General Assembly voted passed the resolution demanding that Israel ends its unlawful occupation of the Palestinian territories within 12 months. But what's interesting here is among the votes you had 124 in favor, and Grenada voted in favor, let me say, and this is important to note that our country is very progressive in this regard, and we must recognize our government's approach here, and certainly what's taking place in the UN and where it stands. And I just want to mention this, and CARICOM, in fact, sits with that 124. But interesting, 14 voted against, and those 14 include the United States, of course, and several European countries. But 43 abstained. There were 43 abstentions, and there was also, so that passed. But of course, Israel is going to ignore this. But there were additional calls we're hearing for Cuba to be delisted as a terrorist state, and to end the U.S. embargo. So this is still very much on the agenda for the unlawful embargo. So I think it's an interesting session. We have not heard from Grenada or Prime Minister yet in terms of his deliberation at the UN, but we wait and see to hear this. But certainly it's interesting. And yeah.
Yes. And the reason I talked about the relevance of the UN.
Yeah.
The Cuba situation is a classic example. The General Assembly have been voting for years now that the US end the embargo that's happening on Cuba, and nothing has happened.
Yeah.
We vote every year, and we overwhelmingly vote to say this nonsense must stop, and nothing happens. Hence the reason I said some of us will question the relevance of the UN. What is the sense of a General Assembly voting in favor of the removal and nothing happens? I mean, because the US is a big US and they sit and veto.
So the UN has no teeth in this regard. But as we on the subject, of course, we see Israel escalating of the war. We see what's happening. In fact, what's interesting is that I was listening to a commentary made by a US intelligence expert, and counterterrorism expert, and what he's saying is he considered the act to arm walkie-talkies and pagers, put explosives in them, as an act of terrorism act, because the fact that these devices is now in homes with children, and we saw children got killed. But clearly the escalation of that war there and the bombing there is and we should not feel that us in the Caribbean or Grenada and elsewhere is immune to the implications of those wars, the fallout of those wars as they escalate. what are our preparations? Because this could have clearly implication to shipping and other supplies, essential supplies to countries like ours and around the world. So when I hear the head of the UN and other states talk about the crisis and the possibility of escalation, I think it is not premature for us to have some prepared action to take or preparation just in case. Chris.
But I mean, what scares me about this, Byron, you may argue whether what the Israelis have done, whether they have a right to defend themselves in various forms and fashion. But the miniaturizing of these devices and making them bombs and how they're doing it is what is my concern. Because remember, the technology would not stay with Israel only.
No.
There are other groups in the world who would weaponize and look at things so that things will escalate or not, and that is the concern.
Yeah.
Because many of the wars that are fighting on the African continent, many of the wars now that is fighting across Ukraine and Russia and so on, you worry with the technology that we have with AI and so on and drones.
Yeah.
We can make a drone a bomb.
Yeah.
If you could do it in a walkie-talkie or in a pager.
Yeah.
What is there stopping other people who are like-minded as terrorists and others who have a cause doing it in that miniature form, in that very small miniaturized form? And that is a concern for me and those of us who live in zones of peace as a Caribbean.
Yeah.
You may have a problem with somebody or political party and you miniaturize your thing and you blow up and you kill people.
And the problem there was why that expert felt that it was an act of terrorism, because what had happened, Israel, Mossad, they were able to infiltrate the supply chain, and that is the action that was wrong. But further, I want to tell you that lately I understand that the US has banned technology from China and other countries in their automobiles. Because these automobiles have GPS and other technology, so these your automobile can be, what's the word? Militarized. It can become a weapon. You could stop all cars on the highway suddenly. You can create chaos. So the U.S. is moving forward to ban these technologies.
But here we have Mr. Gentleman's company that does Teslas.
Yes.
That operates his Tesla vehicles on something called Starlink.
Yeah.
That is attached to satellites that he have above the earth.
Yeah.
So he stays away from doing it in the old traditional way.
Yeah.
How do you stop him, Mr. Elon
Musk,
whatever his name is?
Yeah.
Yes.
Musk. Yeah.
And how do you interrupt that situation and not weaponize it?
Yes.
Because he's doing it for his Teslas through Starlink and have direct links. We had people with phones after Beryl passed on the yachting community who used Starlink and was able to put people in touch with their families by use of their phones. So the question becomes, Byron, you're banning China on the use of their technology in their vehicles and what is coming, and possibly because it's more sophisticated than what the US have. So what stops China from doing a Starlink type operation? And then if that is the case, how are you stopping them? You blow up all the satellites in the atmosphere? I mean,
it's an interesting thing. Chris, local politics, man. Things are heating up a bit here, I find. I don't know. I was hearing a report on one of those stations recently that, well, let's first talk about the NDC, that one of the advocates were calling for changes at the executive level. He's not satisfied. He's echoing this on his commentaries, not at all satisfied with the work on the ground, He's saying that the government is going good, the project's wide, but the work on the ground is unsatisfactory. People are not feeling the presence of the NDC. And then across the board, we have the NNP mobilizing. We know that they have set a date now for the General Council meeting. I think this is scheduled now for the end of the month. So are we going to have an election soon or something? I had talk about rescuing Grenada. And I mean, what's going on, Chris? Maybe you could help me.
Well, I mean, I, like you, have been watching at some of these developments, and of course, the interesting thing with all of that is, if you were to take the NDC side, I suppose the fear that members on that side have is, in the past when they lost elections, it was because there was these allegations that the party was not well organized in terms of carrying on the political mandate of the party. So you have those concerns, and I suppose it's being raised against that context when you see what NNP is doing now to ramp up their meetings in various constituencies. And you obviously get a sense that regardless of the leadership issue concerning NNP, there is this need now for us to start ramping up the politics, getting their base excited, and putting forward possible solutions for the way forward and highlighting aspects of the NDC government that are in play now where they believe they could do better and so on. So there is a certain level of ramping up of the political environment. NNP has started, and of course, you have seen what our commentator said about NDC and the lack of or dissatisfaction with what is happening on their side. So it is an interesting time. I think between now and December, the political climate on the NNP side is going to get very interesting, and we're going to see what the response is from the NDC from a political point of view in terms of exciting their base and justifying, why they need another term or whatever the case may be. So interesting time.
Yeah, of course. We have two new senators, I think, were appointed today. Is it Hosford and what's the... I don't recall the other. She's a doctor, I believe. Is it Joseph at the? She works at the School of Medicine, I think. So it's interesting. We'll hear a bit more about what's happening there. Well, we have very much what is considered a drought period here. How this is affecting the agri sector and food generally. But coming up, let me just say this: we have an interesting conversation with Mr. Simeon Collins. He's of course the food scientists, technologists, and so we'll be looking in details at our whole food security and nutrition vulnerability or situation. So after the break, we want to come back and have this conversation. So stay with us. We'll be right back.
In our part of the world, we need to be prepared for natural disasters like storms and hurricanes, even outside of the season. I'm sure you'll agree that keeping our loved ones, homes, and businesses safe is important. So, I came up with a few quick tips to help you stay safe. Familiarize yourself with your electrical panel, as it may be necessary to switch off the power during a storm or flood. Make sure you install a transfer or isolation switch to prevent your generator feeding electricity to Grenlec's line. If trees are too close to power lines, call Grenlec at 237 for advice. By following these easy steps, you will be well on your way to being hurricane ready. Don't be caught off guard by natural disasters. Prepare now. For more information, visit grenlec.com.
Always use clean cooking and eating utensils and clean food preparation surfaces before and after use to prevent the spread of bacteria and viruses that can cause illnesses such as food poisoning. A message from the Grenada Food and Nutrition Council.
Have you recovered from Carnival yet? Well, you should be by now, as MTV is ready to deck the halls with festive Christmas treasures. Yes, you heard it. Your wish can come through in December with MTV, Fusion FM, and Grenada Informer. Stay tuned and await the magic of Christmas.
Welcome back, viewers. As mentioned earlier, our special guest this evening is Mr. Simeon Collins. As I said, he's multi-skilled, a trained professional with over 35 years experience in the areas of food processing, food safety, food quality, and nutrition in all facets of standardization. His primary education is from Grand Roy Government School. He's very proud of this. Of course, presentation college boy. He's a holder of a Bachelor of Science degree in food science from the University of Havana, Cuba. He also has MSc from the University of British Columbia in Vancouver. He's a former director of the Grenada Bureau of Standards and CEO of the Caribbean Agricultural Health and Food Safety Agency. He served as chairman of the Emergency Housing Committee in the aftermath of Hurricane Ivan to restore housing stock, as well as chairman of the Housing Authority of Grenada. He also served on several boards. He's presently, I think, on the board of directors of Communal Credit Union. He's a member of the board of the Eastern Caribbean Telecommunications alternate director company. So, well-rounded local scientist, welcome to the program.
Thank you very much. Very good night. Just to state that I am a retiree. I'm no longer on any board. I'm no longer on Communal Credit Union board.
Okay.
Although they do ask me to do things with them. They had a bylaws committee, and I headed that committee.
But you retired from this
But I retired from everything.
Given your years working as a food scientist, particularly, and at the Bureau of Standards, with standardization in particular, but that work there, what is your sense of Grenada at the present time as far as its food and nutrition security is concerned? Are you optimistic? Where do you see it presently, and how's the future looks for you?
Well, in terms of food and nutrition security, usually when I look at that, I look at it from a global standpoint and a national standpoint. Globally, I usually use the definition of the Food and Agriculture Organization, FAO, in which they more or less describe food and nutrition security in 3 words: accessibility, availability, and affordability. So if there's enough food, if you have access to food, if it's available and it's affordable to all people at all times, more or less you have food security. From a national standpoint, you look at it as the amount of food that is available from the domestic, whether it's produced domestically or whether it's imported into the country. Okay, so it's not just to say you're producing enough food locally, so you have a good food security program. But if you import also, but hurricane, more or less, COVID has taught us a lot of things about that, because in terms of import, during COVID, food could not come in. Okay, it could not come to the country, so we had no imports. And not only that, in some cases, when it reached in the US, they seize it for their own people. Trump was in power, they take it, it couldn't come at all. So we in the Caribbean really suffered in that way. So we had a serious food and nutrition security problem. I must say and add that at that time, as you said, I was working at CAFSA, the Caribbean Agricultural Health and Food Safety Agency, based in Suriname. And CARICOM took a decision that we should try to export more among ourselves, because it's one CARICOM, okay? One community. Mm-hmm. And they asked CAFSA to develop 19 standards that's SPS standards, okay? Sanitary and phytosanitary standards for foods that we can export within ourselves. Among these, we had rice from Guyana, we had sugar from Guyana, we had ground provisions and so from Grenada, as well as St. Vincent. You had all these things. You had shrimps also from Guyana. And we just developed these standards so that in case a similar COVID come around, we will be able to export.
Let's look a bit at our local situation, because the government is presently, I'm aware, undertaking the necessary steps to establish a food and nutrition policy. And this is the statistics. This is the information they have gathered through the surveys with the community. They have determined that 42.3% of the population is unable to eat healthy and nutritious food. Ate less than they should, 40%. Ate only few kinds of foods, 46%. Went hungry for an entire day, 30% sometimes. These figures are alarming.
Yeah, but it's not just Grenada.
No, but I'm focusing on ourselves.
Yeah, but worldwide, just tell you worldwide.
Yeah, worldwide, yeah.
One out of every 6 person worldwide, okay, are undernourished.
Yeah.
And then 1 out of 5 are chronically undernourished.
Yeah.
So it's a serious problem. You see.
But what
there
are we
is-
doing? What are we doing, or what are we not doing to address this chronic situation? Because we've seen it. I want to go further, Brother Collins, that it was also determined, the Grenada Food and Nutrition Council recently did their survey with children and determined that they were alarmed. They are concerned about the rising obesity in our children and overweight. So I'm telling you what's happening, because at the same time, our biggest import food is processed foods, not healthy food. So what are we not doing?
But the fact is that there is sufficient food around worldwide
Yeah.
to feed everyone. The problem is the distribution. Okay? The rich people have all the food to themselves. They control that. In fact, there is sufficient food to ensure that, people, the average citizen gets about 3,600 calories of food daily. And when you check that, the average man would need just about 2,000 to 3,000. The average woman about 2,000 to 2,400. So there's sufficient food to feed everybody. But the problem is distribution. That's what is inadequate. So once we can address that distribution problem, we can certainly address the inadequate food that we are facing. It's not just a Grenada problem, but that has to be addressed internationally. As you spoke just now about the UN, and they have been doing a lot of work in that area. Even Ban Ki-moon, who was the former Secretary General, I want to quote him, he said, "Nothing is more degrading than hunger, especially when it's man-made." So it's been man-made. Let's get the distribution right.
But I understand you too, Brother Collins, that it's a global issue. But the question is, think globally, but act locally. What are we not doing? What is it we have to do to ensure that, for example, let me go there too. Our school feeding program. I recently saw a report on it. A lot of issues there. They are not getting. Children are not getting highly nutritious food there. That main meal in a day. So, in other words, we know what the problems are. Why are we not solving them?
I was recently, that was about September last year, I was invited to speak at a AgriFest. That is Ministry of Agriculture planning. Putting a plan in place to look at this whole thing, right? And it was an amazing plan. I like what I heard. But what has happened since then? I've heard nothing. Even if they put it together, the problem is implementation and monitoring. I would suggest what we can do is put in place a results-based management program, RBMP, whereby you can hold people responsible for different activities. We had one, CARICOM put one for all its 25 institutions, And so you look at who is supposed to be responsible for such and such. You put time bound, you put targets, indicators. And every week or so, we had to meet and say, how much have we done?
But is it a political issue? Is that our governments are not pursuing what is important? Because it's not happening.
I wouldn't say it's political. They have it in place, but this has been happening for years. Our government, they just put this thing in place and nothing afterwards happened. Yeah. And that is a serious problem. I've seen recently, also I look at a number for under the CTO program, the tourism program that the government, I analyze for them a number of assistance they were providing for small businesses and so on in food, and they were giving up to $75,000, but then you would give that again and you don't monitor it. And I remember many years ago I did the same thing under the last government, and people were coming in and you do the same thing without monitoring. One lady came in. Yes, we wrote the check. We had the check written to the supplier. Right. You know what she did? because he came back in for the same equipment. She went to the supplier and made them sign the back of the check, and she cashed it and buy things to fix the house.
You've been at the helm of the Grenada Bureau of Standards for many years, what, 15 years, 20 years, a long time.
Yes, for 20.
And that institution has been leading the way for dealing with agro-processors and agro-processing in generally, the standards, the support with inputs to producers. Why is it that we still have this high level of wastage, and why has our agro-processing sector not developed where it, in any significant way? We have an important one, of course, but it hasn't grown and hasn't developed in the way we expect it to. We still have so much wastage.
A lot has been done, you know. We have come a long way from when I started at the Bureau of Standards. Yeah. When I started, you know, people used to just tie the bags, no labels.
Right.
You know, you couldn't tell the difference between sugar, white sugar, and salt. People used to sell for sugar. We had to lobby and things. You know, and when we did that, I could tell you, some of the supermarkets were saying they don't care about that. They're not labeling anything. We had to force them to do the labeling. Mm-hmm. Some of these small agro-processors and things, when they came, you tell them about this, and they're not labeling. And remember, they said that I went on the computer and make labels for her. I said, just try that 20.
Packaging also.
Yeah, you know, so she tried the 20, then she come back, oh God, everybody wanted, make some more. So we started making it. Packaging, we started importing all kind of packaging instead of using used rum bottles and so on to put your pepper sauce and seasoning. We started importing packaging materials, both plastic and bottles and so on, fish rings. We brought in some from Trinidad, from the US, and you know.
But are you satisfied with the progress we've made? Are you satisfied?
A lot of progress have been made. No, we don't see this thing anymore. Everybody know, you see everything about labels and so on. Yeah. So a lot of progress, but it's ongoing. It won't stop.
Let me pause here. Chris, are you there? Chris. Hello?
Sorry about the when I was on mute. I haven't fallen asleep yet.
Okay, good. Go ahead, Chris.
Right, so Simeon, good evening.
How are you doing, sir?
Good to see you.
Well, I see you three past people at the Bureau of Standards. This was the consumer man, you were the representative of what was it? Was the really private sector, and I was the director. So I say, you know,
that's true. I was there for about 15 years, actually, a long time.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Simeon have been a stalwart and one of the guys that would have brought our labeling to a level that we would never have seen it at this stage.
Yes.
Got mandatory standards in place to deal with labeling, which has helped the industry significantly. Simeon, I want to stay with Bureau Standards for a while and get your opinion, because Bureau Standards recently was in the news concerning water and quality of water and so on. And there is questions that have come up surrounding whether or not the Bureau lab and the analysis being done in the lab in the Bureau is up to international standards, and the impact that can have on private sector businesses if some of the stuff they do is not fully in touch with international standards in terms of testing. Then there is the issue of what happens on the port and what comes in on the port, and the Bureau's role in ensuring that proper products come in properly labeled and proper nutrition and so on, and the level of enforcement that is required under the law and under the standards. And the enforcement part and the testing part is where I'd like to hear your opinion, because you were pivotal in creating the Bureau and having it where it is today. So I want to get your thoughts on those two areas.
Yeah, in terms of the lab of the Bureau of Standards, they are fully certified to 17025, the international standard, ISO 17025, fully certified. And there was no mistake in terms of the testing of the water. You can ask the company. They realized that afterwards. There was no mistake. Okay? So they realized that, and they put all measures in place to correct it. It's not the problem has not been corrected. The water is out on the market again. It's drinking well. I bought my big bottle again, and everything is running back as it should. So there was no mistake. The labs in the Bureau are fully certified. And right now, If you go to the Bureau of Standards, you would see they have now put down a big building. It's almost finished, okay? Costing over $2.something million for the labs, okay? Microbiological, chemical, and so they got assistance from the CDF, Caribbean Development Fund. That would open, I think, in October, okay? And if you go in there, you will see this thing, and you'll see it's one of the best in the Caribbean. In fact, a lot of people come into the Bureau of Standards when I was there for training at the labs. You know, so it's fully certified. Going on to the put.
I am happy to hear that. Sorry, Simeon, I'm happy to hear that. But you know, my obvious question will be maintenance and resourcing in terms of human resource for the labs and what is happening there. We have a serious problem in the medical side with tests and equipment in the labs in these laboratories for testing and certification and so on. So yes, I know our lab, the Bureau's lab is certified to the standard we listed 17 whatever. At the end of the day, could we properly resource it and maintain it so that you are sure and you have the confidence? Because I hear what you say about the water issue, but that issue has shaken the confidence of some of us in the private sector when you heard what had happened and how it had happened. So the follow-up question here is maintenance and resourcing.
Yeah, well, I didn't like how it happened. Though. Usually, you should ask the person, the business to do the own recall, you know, and instead of the bureau putting out a recall. So it's something that happened before. It's not the first time it happened, you know. It happened in my time about 3-4 times, but nobody heard about it. The recall was done. In terms of human resource, the lady that is in charge of the lab, she has a degree, microbiology or something, and she was in the government lab at the hospital. So it's not saying it's just take anybody and do it. There are fully qualified people in there. In the metrology lab and in the materials lab, you have an engineer there, you know, and everywhere. Mr. Medford, who is the director, is in charge of metrology, fully qualified with his master's degree. Everybody. In fact, I was surprised when I go in there to see the amount of qualified staff. In my time, I hired a lot of, because we didn't have much cash, a lot of Imanis and so on. We had about 5, 6, 7 Imanis hired. And I go back to here, all them guys had a degree. And there were people with advanced level at that time, but we didn't have money. You know, so the money was paying. They were being getting paid under the money. I encouraged them to study. A number of them studied and they went on to work in banks and other institutions. But there are about 2 or 3 of them right there from the accountant go right back, who are people with their degree. And few people.
Look, so I want to go quickly on agro processing and what is happening in that particular area in Grenada, because I heard Byron thing about the nutrition, and that is a serious aspect of it. But in my understanding of this situation with agro processing over the years, there seemed to be not so much. I was talking to a particular person who into dealing with mangoes and what is required, for example, in mangoes. And I want to take this conversation in agro-processing from research and development and your experience in that area, and what is your thoughts and suggestions, because the person was indicating to me that, listen, not all mangoes are suitable for agro-processing. You have different species, different types, and in Grenada we have many species. And it's just about 4 or 5 of them that could really be used for processing and making mango products, whether it's juices or whatever the case is. And of course, we still have the issue of seasonality and the effect on production of these raw materials for agro-processing. So we see a lot of agro-processors have started and have failed. And the question becomes exactly what is the root cause, and is there a way that we could deal with the raw material supply, apply technology to the situation, and understand what are the best species to use for this thing, for the agro-processing. And I mean, tamarind juice, as you know, Simeon is one of the most popular juices we have in this country. But we can never get a consistent supply because Tamban now, Byron ain't growing Tamban tree because he ain't think that is progressive enough.
That's where you're probably wrong, huh? Okay.
And the returns, and I'm happy to be wrong. But yes, Simeon, so my question is, where do we see us changing the remitting agro-processing? Because we have had many failures, apart from the little pepper industry and seasonings and so on, which are micro. How do we grow it to a major thing that we could do consistently source up juices, Tamban juices, and we go back since the days of the revolution, you know, Simeon, because you are wrong long enough like me. And we have not, since the days of the revolution, been able to stride and straddle the problems that we have in agro-processing. Your thoughts on this?
Yeah. In terms of what you first said, not all mangoes are suitable for agro-processing. That's so correct. You must have the bulk ones with juice and body. The Ceylon, the Bombay, you know, the Indian East.
And the
Indian,
one by us show off with the peach that is eaten.
the peach, you know, they have the thick bulk, so you can get juice and flesh, flesh and so. You need the juice to make the jelly. You need the flesh to make, you know, to make the jam. You see, so you must have that. So most people say, "Oh, I got a mango, the street spoiling," but you're crazy. If you go pick up that, you get nothing. You start with junk, you go end up with junk. You cannot use that at all.
And our Ceylon trees are getting less and less, eh?
They are getting less. I just plant some in my home garden there, and I hope soon I should have some for my own use.
What variety?
Ceylon. I have Julie, and I have what we call the mango cutlass, a long, nice mango.
And I want to say that the ministry this year introduced two new varieties, an Indian variety and a Trinidad mango also. And there's a lot that admirable still. You know, farmers have not taken them up to any major extent.
And that is serious.
Yeah.
That could be processed nicely.
Yeah.
You see? Yeah. Very nicely. I wonder if Lakwenda knows about that because it could be processed.
Look.
Now, in terms of you talk about the process, so we could move off because our crops are seasonal. You can do as what is being done elsewhere. You can you pulp it and freeze it. I was in Dominica last week and the same question they asked me. You know, so months ago I did some assistance with at Bello and so, you know, for the FAO. And advise something that you pulp it, you freeze it. You know, if you pulp it right, you don't even have to put it in the freezer. It stays there for years and years. So when you're ready, all that you do is add water. You see? All that you go add water, you know, and you heat the pasteurizer, so sterilize, and you're ready. And that's how every country in the world is doing. In terms of the Tamban, I know Michelle has done a lot, Michelle Confectionery. She has been freezing the pulp for years. So you see, she has Tamban balls and Tamban juice.
Right through.
Right through. Because you have these two big freezers, you know.
And frozen tamarind is not really frozen. Even when you put it in the freezer, it doesn't take ice. It doesn't get...
It does not.
It maintains its consistency, even when it's frozen.
Yeah, the water activity.
Okay.
The water is bound.
Oh, that's,
so,
that's why. But just a follow-up to Chris' question. Here's the thing. Following Beryl, we've had a major destruction of our two primary crops, which is cocoa and nutmeg. In fact, the nutmeg numbers is like the move from 750 tons to maybe 300 to 350. Cocoa may be even more significant in terms of the drop. Some people have been saying we're no longer a major player in the market, certainly for nutmeg, and so we may need to, it may be more strategic for us from a income point of view, a value point of view, to focus now on those two commodities on added value, agro-processing. What do you think of this? And what are the possibilities there?
The quantity of nutmegs and cocoa we have, it doesn't make
300
sense.
tons.
Yeah, right now what you could make with it, jams, jam, jelly,
We're talking about the pod. I'm talking about the nutmeg itself, like all your resins.
Other
grounded
if you
nutmegs.
export that, the cost you're getting is so much more. And the quantity that you have, it's something as it's like some seaweed. People will say, oh, if we're making this, we could make that, we can make that. But the quantity, it doesn't make sense. The quantity you have is
Economy of
smells,
scale.
and so economy of scale.
That's the point. So 300 tons now, you're no longer a major player in the market. Your position in the market has now moved from second place to 9th. You're now very small.
Yeah, but you still, Grenada nutmeg is still one of the best. The myristic acid and so on and so on.
I'm not sure that still holds.
Everybody still, So
something I want to move on to. You were active post Ivan, particularly in the housing sector. In fact, as stated earlier, you were the chairman of the Emergency Housing Committee. Yeah, so you had significant experience there in that whole effort to build back better. Now we've had Hurricane Beryl, and we see what happened in Carriacou and into Alexa extend the north of the island. We've got significant income, insurance monies, so there's a cash flow. What is your sense of what has happened so far in that sector, the damage, the extent of the damage, but more importantly, the action to restore, rebuild at this stage? What's your view on this?
What is necessary that the government should try to do as soon as possible is to put an emergency housing policy in place. We did that after Ivan, and that saved us a lot. What the policy says is who would get what. You have a list. First, we can only purchase assistance in those days with people with an income under $16,000. The old and needy would get preference. People with AIDS and so on, they get they'll get preference. The single parent, women, I mean.
So the criteria.
Yeah, big criteria telling who would get what.
Yeah.
And
policy.
So not everybody should expect. There are people who had a big house and they lost their roof and they could actually put it back.
So you're not seeing a policy. There's
no policy in place.
Well, what about the structural part of it too?
Well, the structure, again, that's very important. Because I was yesterday, Monday, I was on the King program live with Milton Coy in Carriacou. And I was speaking about the structure, of the houses and letting them know it's something that they have to take very seriously. You have to have, your roof must be what we call gable roof, not hip roof, so the winds would not blow it off. And with very short eave, so it would not
lift
and lift it. You have to have hurricane straps and strap.
But this standard's already there, isn't it?
It's there.
Yeah.
We did a lot of training under that.
Yeah, I think the greater question is we're supposed to have learned from Ivan what is supposed to be done properly and not. So it's not that we're going to anybody to understand and creating a wheel.
Yeah.
We're supposed to have that. We have people with, like Simeon, with the institutional knowledge of what needs to be done in the housing sector. And the issue of capacity, Simeon, is what I'm not getting.
Yeah.
And we don't need to go, we know what was done after Ivan and what we had to do, capacity, boots on the ground, to get people houses back up faster than they're happening now. Yeah, it is disheartening to know we're fastly approaching December, and if we are to get 100 houses done in Carriacou between now and then, it might be impossible.
Yeah,
and then there's the psychological and trauma affected with that, and people not get, particularly among the elderly.
Yes.
And the vulnerability.
We had the same problem in Ivan.
Yeah.
What we did, when I noticed, first week, second week, nothing doing. We had to bring in the Guyanese, and they came in with the hardwood, and so on. And we had to get them, we put them in the Somali community centers to live. There were over 300 or so Guyanese. We bring them through Montage, who came to sell the hardwood and granite wood for us. And in about 3-4 days' time, they put up a house. Now for now, houses are going up. So you must have to bring in these people. You see, and not only that, there were a lot of assistants also that came from outside. The military from Guyana came. We had them put, when I The first 4 days when I went up in Tempe, we had a lady with some kids living under a step. Now for now they came and they put up a house for them. You got assistance from USAID who came and built back the schools and other government buildings rapidly. And then what was shorted was cash. We did all that without cash.
So there's no shortage of cash now.
What happened in the case of cash? We Prime Minister Manning came from Trinidad and he said he going to assist Grenada. So myself, Ms. Charter, who was the PS in housing, and Lennox Tozanjus, who was at that time the director of finance, we flew down there.
So the Minister of Agriculture is aware of all these actions.
Yeah, man. And we still work close, and we always work closely.
Yeah.
We taught together in Wesley College together. Since then we went to Cuba to come together.
Okay, you studied
everything.
Same time, yeah.
So we are very close.
And that is the point I'm making, Simeon, that you guys are still around. Simeon, you have all your faculties in place, and you are a proficient writer now. You write all the time on different areas.
Food for thought.
And I'm not understanding. Yes, and I'm not understanding what is the hesitation with our current government to move faster. If you have to bring in people, you have to house them, what it is that we need to do, talk to different armies in the region, how they could assist. I'm just not understanding what is the hesitance. I know Minister Williams launched a house this week talking about and had it erected. I think it's a wooden structure. But then again, we're not sure if in trying to get things done, that they're following the right engineering to ensure that the next time we get hit in this region, and there will be a next time in a shorter time frame, that we can withstand the level of destruction we have seen in Petit Martinique and Carriacou.
Chris, I want to agree with you because, Colin, look, on GBN, in fact, a major television station was showing on Monday what's happening in Carriacou. We had many people in tents. They're asking for mattresses. They're asking for lumber. They're asking for a lot of basic things that you would think 60, 70, 80 days after. It's 2 months. Yeah. Well, how long? When was the hurricane? It's about 2 months now. Yes, is it? More.
Yeah.
The cleanup happened by Ron.
Yeah.
The most extensive. That's a major part.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. You see, what initially happened in Ivan is that the gentleman who was a laborer in the country house, when I came to town, I saw a number of them, and they were no contractors. It was a serious problem, and it could happen again. They didn't know what they were doing. They just, they make the mistake, and people houses in the country, and now they turn contractor. We at the housing authority, I was the chairman of the board. We had a lot of them working with us. They tell us, you can't work for us right now. Maybe being big money out there. So we had to bring in, we were forced to bring in people to do the work. So once you can do that, it's important. Another important thing is that in Grenada, about 60-70% of the houses are insured, and you get assistance from there. My house, Rafael, I got the insurance, Grenada General Insurance. No, for now, they come and fix me up. My mom's house, Rafael, they fix up. The Bureau of Standards, house foods. And no, for now, we got it to assist. In Carriacou, it's only 20% of the houses that are insured. So it's a serious problem they're facing.
And Simeon, you just stated after Ivan, a criteria was developed.
Yes.
To arrange for housing in Grenada after Ivan.
Yes.
The poor, the elderly, if your income level. I mean, we have to go and create that. They apply to Carriacou.
And I have it on the. I put it on the new today. It's out there.
Yeah.
Stating it. So it's something I wrote about.
So the vulnerable in Carriacou, which is the elderly and the people at a certain income range, government could know if they had to put on 500 houses or 100 in Carriacou through whatever mechanism we use in private contractors or whoever. We know a certain percentage will be going based on this criteria. And I keep getting frustrated because you're not hearing these things coming out as it ought to. And you have to ask the question, if there is a capacity issue, let us bring in the people who can assist us.
Bring 20 Guyanese and open all everything finished. in about Carriacou.
I say bring Bring 30 Venezuelans and we'll see what will happen as well.
But the Venezuelans also, I remember when the Venezuelans came, I went on the battleship and negotiated with the lady who was ambassador, I think it was Edna, for houses, and see, we speak Spanish and so on, and they agreed to give 100 houses, and these houses were put down in La Colombe by Captain Fernandez and the crew. No fun how they put them up. The Chinese, we negotiated houses with the Chinese. They're 2,000. At that time, the embassy was down by your side down there, and all they had was a tennis board. We made them play the ambassador playing tennis, and so myself and Vida Bruno was in PS at that time in housing, and and they just said get the location. They wanted the government to get location for the houses. So I went about. I looked all the areas. I know that where by Monge up there, where I was living at that time. We had Carrick was Dumfries. We look at Bushechu, where Housing Authority has lands, Plains, Away Housing Authority had lands down in Frequency also, Current Housing Scheme. All these, we decided that's where we're going to put it. In some areas where they didn't have lands, and for instance, a lot of houses were built in Scoobies and Marquee, right on the beach there, and they were washed out. So we had to, government actually bought lands and put some houses there for the people. So it's something we have to learn from the past.
And Carriacou and Petit Martinique, Simeon, is a much smaller footprint.
Much smaller.
For that issue.
So it should be
to apply what we learned in Ivory. Much smaller. I mean, the destruction in the north of Grenada in terms of agriculture is a different ball game, and how we get that back up. And that to me will challenge us more than what we learned from Ivan for housing. To get people in Carriacou and PM back on their feet with their housing and electrification of all places.
Should be a relatively easy.
Particularly, you're hearing people talk about Carriacou going to take 2 and 3 years to recover.
No.
That is unacceptable.
Too small. It's a little village.
Yeah.
Yes.
6,000
Yes.
people.
Yeah.
Say, Simeon.
Sorry about that, but I think we just need to. The last thing I want to engage you on in Simeon is the issue of, we talk about distribution of food, and Byron rightfully brought up the issue of nutrition and what is happening. But when you see how much Grenada is a net importer of food, and what we import from rice, come back, and so on, you have to ask the question, health versus, processed foods. And yes, rice now is heavily processed, depending on what you want to do with the rice, white rice and all the different variety of rice we have. And when we go back to what we know with our history of what we grow and what we eat, we were far healthier with corn. Take corn as an example. The amount of processing that going on with corn now is not the same set of corn you and I grew up on, Simeon. Making asham and roasting corn and doing all the rest we used to do with corn, making corn dumpling and all of that. It's a different kind of corn, and it's heavily processed. So the issue to me and to you is, how do we reduce the level of processing, not just in imported sausage and corned beef and so on, but really and truly
Staples.
in our agricultural feed, white yam, tomatoes, cabbage, carrots, heavily processed.
Yeah. I mean, you have
do you believe we could change that trend?
It could be changed. It's something that people eat what they were taught to eat. You see, a lot of sugary drinks are still there. I mean, it's good. I drink me cocoa and other sugar. But, they are using too much of that. Because, as you said, we've seen a lot of little obese kids. Yeah. And before, it wasn't obesity, that was the problem. It was protein, energy, malnutrition, where people were too slim. You see? So it just go the other way.
Of course, we're not exercising.
And lack of exercise again,
as you talk about Coke, I was looking at it the other day, and a Coke has 42 grams of sugar. And I did a calculation, that's 12 teaspoons. 12 teaspoons. Normally we have coffee, we use 2.
Right.
12, that's a lot of sugar. A lot of sugar. But we run out of time here. Simeon, any closing statements that you want to make?
Well, all that I want to say is that, a lot has been done in the past, and we have to give it credit and learn from it in terms of your housing construction, in terms of what we eat and what we grow, in terms of food availability and everything. Even in terms of, I heard recently they talking about marijuana and so on. They looking for.
You think it's a good thing? I mean, you raised it. Is a good thing that the government is moving to decriminalize this substance?
Well, if you ask me, I would say I wouldn't like to.
And is there money in this?
Because the problem is that it's not an easy thing to actually decriminalize. Because one, we're talking about recreational marijuana, and we are talking about medicinal marijuana. It's not something that you grow wild that you could, say export that. The first thing, they must be grown in greenhouses. Second, they have to be tested for the potency. If it's too strong, for instance, for medical purposes, it cannot be used. So you must have a good lab. So it's going to cost a lot of money to put this thing in place. Of course, in some Barbados, I think, and Trinidad or some other country, they permit the Rastas and others, a certain amount of, they plant at home and they smoke it at home. And which again is necessary. Not in the street to go out there and push it and sell it. I could assure you that would not be good. I grew up in the country, as you said, and too many of the guys I school with turned out, as zombies. Because of that, they are bright guys. So you have to make certain, when you actually decide to commercialize it, do it the right way and have it controlled. Don't have the full potency on that.
Well, I want to thank you for being with us. Chris, any closing statement from where you are?
No, thanks, Byron. I mean, thank you, Simeon, for coming on and sharing your thoughts with us, because I think we have a lot of work to do when it comes to recovery of Petit Martinique and Carriacou. I would love to see our government get more organized and with the capacity issues, do what is needed to get people back into their homes as quickly as possible. So thank you very much for your sharing, especially with the Bureau and so on, because I know the confidence in the private sector and the Bureau is something that needs to be addressed as we go forward. So thank you again.
Thanks much for your kind invitation.
Thanks for coming. Viewers, thank you for being with us. We'll see you next week, same time. Let me thank our technical men, studio men, and we'll see you next week, same time, same place. Bye-bye.
Progressive, I'm so excited. I can't hide it. In your blast up and rising, and I like it. It going up and up and up and up and up, blast up and up and up and up and up and up.
Play selected games to win in the Blast Mystery Progressive. Pick until you match 3 gems and win one of the 5 cash jackpots. Or you can blast up with the Mystery Progressive jackpot.
It going up and up and up and up and up, blast up and up and up. Blast gaming.
Have you recovered from Carnival yet? Well, you should be by now, as MTV is ready to deck the halls with festive Christmas treasures. Yes, you heard it. Your wish can come through in December with MTV, Fusion FM, and Grenada Informer. Stay tuned and await the magic of Christmas.
Grenada, come get your money! We know it's been a while, and now we're back! Because on Sunday, October 6th, Megaforce Promotion says all roads leads to Monroe Plainfield for the most exciting bingo game ever! Bucks and money! We're talking 20
30 bingo games, and $100,000 in a box. You decide your winnings. This is gonna be pure fun and excitement. So get your tickets now. $60 for one or $100 for two.
Grenada!
Get ready for $100,000 in cash as Megaforce Promotion presents Box of Money. Sunday, October 6th at Monroe's Playing Field. You just gotta be there.